Hi, my name is Erik Modig, and I'm really looking forward to presenting some of my research. I'm sending this from Stockholm, Sweden, and this is a paper I wrote with my colleague Michael Dahlén about creativity and consumers' perception of creativity and advertising professionals' perception of creativity. And we wanted to see if actually consumers' assessment of creativity, can they actually do it, and actually does it matter? And also to see if advertising agency had the same view on how to assess creativity when it comes to different advertisements and how they actually rated that. So we had a research question about understanding these differences, and of course we would like to look at these different dimensions of creativity that we've seen in the past has an impact on how actually we rate creativity. So these are factors or sub-dimension. As you all know, originality has been proven to be the most important one, that we do something that stands out from the crowd, do something original, something out of the norm in order to increase attention, increase processing, which will actually increase advertising effects. Then we also have appropriateness from a professional or client perspective. This is being on strategy or on brief, that we're actually doing original thought that is actually aligned with what we actually want to, what kind of effect we want to achieve and what kind of message we want to communicate. But we can also say that it's from a consumer perspective, that the original idea is actually something that is connected to the brand or the benefit of that specific product, so that consumers really can understand why we did this. So even if this idea might be interesting and rated high on originality, but for a car brand it wouldn't be appropriate, or for maybe an ice cream brand, or maybe a airline carrier that had discounts on ice cream or ice cream for all or something like that, then it would be more appropriate. And then lastly, we have execution, that it's also one important factor, has shown to be important when it comes to affecting consumers and especially practitioners' overall creativity assessment. And we wanted to test this on advertising professionals and consumers. And our hypothesis was that professionals, aligned with in line with previous research, would focus on originality, while consumers would focus more on appropriateness and execution, because there are two dimensions that are more closely connected to their perspective. And we sent out in the first study 2 different surveys to advertising professionals and consumers. And we had a different working experience and also different working position. And what we could see there in the advertising professional, we had 1/3 not working with the creation or strategy of advertisement. So we removed them from the sample. And then we sampled advertisement from the Creativity Award in Sweden named Guldägget, the golden egg. It's similar to Clio or other creativity awards. And what we picked 20 ads that had been sent in, not only winners or nominations, but sent into this one. So somebody had thought that they would be creative, but some of them were not that creative, which you will see. So you got a range based on the creativity part. And then we asked consumers to rate this as well as ad attitude, brand attitude, and purchase intentions. And first of all, we did factor analysis to see that all the dimensions checked out. And this is, of course, then of importance, first of interest, to see which assessment actually correlated the most to advertising effectiveness. And what we could see there is, for advertising attitude, it was actually consumers' perspective, a rating of creativity that correlated to highest degree, which means, and that was also very weak significance, but it was still significant, seeing that consumers' rating had a little bit stronger correlation, while both had a strong correlation with brand attitude and purchase intentions, even though weaker, of course. But they were, both groups had significant correlations, but we couldn't find any significant differences. So based on this, we could say that yes, we should listen to advertising professionals, and yes, we should listen to consumers, and both have similar correlations to advertising effectiveness. So there's no clear choice on which one should actually say if an advertisement is more or less creative. Both will actually correlate with the effectiveness. And then we also looked at the ratings of the subdimensions, and what we can see here that both rated or had originality as the most important dimension. However, what we can see is that ad professionals rated it to a much higher degree as important, or they used it when we did these regressions to a much higher degree. And we see that in comparison, consumer used appropriateness and execution to a higher degree. So it was in line with our research and previous research, seeing that we know that advertising professionals really look at the originality, while consumers more look on appropriateness and execution. So will this matter actually when we decide to move forward with an idea or not? Well, what we could see here, if we look at the 20 ads and see their mean creativity rating, which could of course be as a proxy for will we continue with this idea or not, if we have a client discussion or if we're sitting in a meeting deciding if we should move on with this idea. What we saw was that the 4 ideas that rated highest from consumers also was the highest rated internally at the agency or at the professionals, which means that sort of if you do great ideas, both groups will recognize those. However, what we also saw that after those, we had 4 ideas that the consumers rated higher than the professionals. So maybe these were ideas that the professionals didn't see as that creative, but the consumers actually did. And we have one idea here that consumers really appreciated, but advertising professionals didn't. And that would be sort of a risk that we then had a good idea that would actually had good effect, but that we should then cut because we didn't like it or didn't see it as creative. And we also had some ideas where we saw that the consumers didn't like them, but actually the professionals actually rated it higher on creativity. So there are differences between those. However, if we do really top result, both groups will appreciate it. And also, if you look at this section here, you can see that it was different dimensions that really contributed to the overall rating. So what we can see is that different professionals, or when professionals assess the creativity, they use different sub-dimensions to come up with their overall assessment. So sometimes it's more originality, more execution, and more appropriate. So there's no sort of one unified way of how we judge an idea. It depends to a high degree, both when it comes to the ad and also hopefully probably then on the person, on the individual making the judgment. Then we had the second study where we wanted to see, do actually consumers assess creativity spontaneously? So what we did then was that we collected additional advertisement. This from the US market. We just bought 10 magazines, picked out all the half-page ads, and then randomly picked them, scanned them, and then sent them actually to consumers and asked them, what do you like this ad? And they said yes, no, and I rated it on a scale. And then we asked them, when you made this judgment, if you liked it or not, what kind of factors or what thoughts did you base that on? Please write your first 5 thoughts. And then we looked at those words and what did they actually write there when they actually made their judgment. And what we saw was that 1/3 of consumers actually used creativity or especially originality or innovativeness when they made their judgment. So 1/3 actually used that. What we also saw was that all consumers are able to rate creativity when prompted, because later on in the study, we asked everybody, can you rate this on creativity 1 to 7? And we saw that there were no difference between those 33% that spontaneously said that they actually looked at the level of creativity and those 67% that didn't mention creativity. There were no significances in their ratings, which means that there's no difference in how you can judge creativity if you're actually spontaneously assess it or not. And what we can also see from the study 1, consumers place less emphasis on originality, appropriateness and execution has more weight in consumer assessment. And in advertising development, consumers should be invited to offer their perspective on creatives because they have a little bit different opinion, and in some cases there could be a big difference. So thank you for listening to this, and hopefully you will take with you some perspective on maybe asking the consumers in some events where you think that there could be a big difference. Thank you a lot for listening to this. Bye.